The time is now 5:03. Good evening and welcome to the February 24th, 2026 Policy and Governance Committee meeting. I am Dr. Felton Moss, Committee Chair and District 7 Board Member. It brings me great pleasure to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. For those unable to observe now, the meeting is being recorded and can be accessed on the PGCPS YouTube channel for later viewing. Ms. Johnson, please call the roll.
Dr. Moss,
Present.
Mrs. Olivo,
Present.
Mrs. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Briggs,
Present.
Mr. Jackson. There are 4 present.
Will the quorum present, the Policy and Governance Committee meeting will come to order. At this time, we'll move to adoption of the agenda. The chair would like to announce that agenda item 7.1 was removed from the agenda to allow the administration additional time to effectively review the item. If there are no objections, the committee shall adopt the February 24th, 2026 meeting agenda as amended. There being no objections, the February 24th, 2026 meeting agenda is adopted as amended. This time we'll move to approval of the meeting minutes. If there are no corrections, the February 10th, 2026 meeting minutes shall be approved as distributed. There being no corrections, the minutes are approved. We'll now move to peer-to-public comment. The chair recognizes the registered speaker for public comment. To our registered speakers, you are allotted 3 minutes to share your remarks. Speaking time may not be transferred to another individual. The board will not engage in dialogue during this portion of the meeting. Speakers are expected to refrain from using profanity or derogatory language. A warning will be issued once. Continued misconduct may result in the speaker being muted or removed from the meeting. To support a professional and courteous environment, speakers are encouraged to refer to the individuals by their titles, such as chair, board member, superintendent, or principal, rather than by name. Tonight, we only have one public speaker. Our speaker this evening is Lisa Wilson, individual policy discussion through the lens of a parent.
So Dr. Moss, there isn't a Lisa Wilson on, but there is a Nicole Wilson.
I'm assuming,
She's raising her.
should we ask Nicole if she too is Lisa Wilson?
Nicole is raising her hand. You want to bring her over?
Sure. If Nicole, if you are Lisa, could you rename yourself so that we can be in alignment with the registered speaker? And then I can give you 3 minutes.
Okay.
You are Lisa, correct?
Yes. Yes.
I got
yes.
you.
It's not cooperating with me.
You're good. I've made a note to the general public, so I'm not going to stress you out.
Okay, thank you.
You take your 3 minutes and they begin now. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, because I've had to engage in so much advocacy for my son through the administrative process and legal processes, I've kind of had the door shut on me by Board of Education members because I'm deemed as, it's like a legal discussion. But so I have to seize these opportunities to take advantage of what I need to share with you all today. Because what I have found through the retaliation that I've experienced is that there are some serious gaps in some policies. Number one, I would like to talk about the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution. It establishes that federal law takes precedence over conflicting state laws and local policies. In the context of special education, this means that federal laws, primarily IDEA, Section 504, and ADA, set the minimum standard for educating students with disabilities nationwide. If a state or a local school district policy provides fewer rights or conflicts with these federal rights, the aforementioned that I just mentioned, mandates, the federal law prevails. And I've been in a situation where we relocated in the county and my son's transportation was documented in his IEP. However, the associate superintendent and the director of transportation, they determined that they were not going to transport him from our new home to his school that he was placed in. And so I bring that to your attention because I think that there needs to be a top-down policy review looking at these policies. And you guys do acknowledge that discrimination will never be tolerated. And I think that's wonderful. But I think when it comes to this disabled population of students, there needs to be more of a definitive carve out to make sure that those who are making decisions do not undercut the federal entitlements that this population of students are entitled to. For example, I was asked to transport my son, and I do recommend that everyone, all you have to do is Google it. It's Technical Assistance Bulletin through MSDE, and it's 16-01. And in that bulletin, it expressly states that parents should never be asked to transport their children. The same group of people who accosted me in a personal telephone call offered me mileage. They offered me Champion's childcare, enough to let me get there. You can't take taxpayer dollars and try to coerce a parent into doing something that is totally the responsibility of the district. And as you know, when you are a recipient of federal funds, there is obligations that you must adhere to. So I'm asking you today if you could really take a step back and look at all your policies and make sure that there's a carve out for this special population of children, because they definitely have federal entitlements that a local school board policy, an administrative policy, or a state law cannot undermine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms.
All
Wilson,
right.
for coming tonight.
Okay, take care.
All right. There are no written comments. Thank you for your participation and input. Now we will move to item 6.0, which is the legislative update. The chair recognizes Ms. Welsh for the legislative update.
I am very sorry, but for some reason, and I was just not the other night on a work call, and I had a beautiful screen, and tonight, for some reason, I cannot get my video to work at all. I do apologize. But the legislative update, I did make a chart, and Mia can actually put it on the chart, so you wouldn't be seeing me anyway because you'd be looking at the chart. So that's at least a little positive. So Mia, could you please put the chart up, the legislative chart up, please? There we go. Okay, so I thought I would just go through some of the bills that are coming up within this next week, this week into the end of the week, that are important for us. And actually, the first one, which is one that has taken a lot of, there's been a lot of conversation about, is House Bill 649, and it would cost us as advancing equal educational opportunities for all students in Maryland, and because of all the particulars that are in that bill, it would be an unfunded mandate with an estimated cost of approximately $752,000 in fiscal year 2027, and up to 49 40 sorry, four I think I typed that wrong. It's supposed to be 44 excuse me, 49 thank you, 494 $700 in fiscal 31. And so basically the House bill was established in part for the purposes of authorizing the Commission of Civil Rights to enforce prohibition against discrimination and retaliation in all the different protected areas. And education institutions, including pre-K programs in elementary school, secondary, they are included in this, and this is all defined under state educational authority. And I think one of the main reasons that they published or proposed this bill is because of the fact that OCR and the education department Department of Education has really taken a very low, does not do very much of, like before they did all the investigations. They're not. So I think Maryland is sort of saying, well, we'll try to fill in that gap. But they've added a lot of different things which have really increased the cost. And then if you can scroll down just a little bit more, then in terms of, oh shoot, that it shouldn't have been okay. Anyway, in terms of just the fact that educational institutions may not exclude individuals from participating in anything that we offer to some students have to be offered to all students, and so there's extensive steps in the process which would increase the cost, of can you just excuse me when I apologize greatly, but I know this is the superintendent's office calling me. I'll be off the phone in 1 second. I apologize. I apologize. Um, anyway, and so the cost of all the steps that are involved would be pretty good amount of money, so that it is one of our unfunded mandates. So we would oppose this. The next one is House Bill 329, and this is criminal law. School resource officers prohibition on sexual activity with students. And of course, there's no fiscal operational impact because at this point, we don't need that law to tell us that our school resource officers are prohibited from having sexual activity with students. We have numerous policies. We have a policy and we have numerous administrative procedures, and we have the employee code of conduct that are all in place. And that would apply to anyone that's working in our schools and even our volunteers. So, and we do support that. We want to make sure that our students are safe. So that would be that's one for support. And then House Bill 1341 is school security personnel immigration investigation and enforcement. And that one is that our school security personnel are not supposed to be working with the outside with the federal agents or whatever coming in, and aligns actually with our immigration enforcement agency policy. So we would support that also. And then if you scroll down a little bit further, right now, student athletics, physical examinations, and cardiovascular pre-screening. At this point, we do not have any position. There is, we do have depending on the sport and whatever, they do often take the doctors. The doctor will do the exam, and it's requiring actual cardiovascular pre-screening, and the doctor would do the exam, and then they fill out the information on the actual evaluation form that the child has to bring in that gives permission for them. They're physically able then to participate in the athletics. So that one is not necessary. And then if you scroll down further, Cindy, then we have the next one is House Bill 26, which is open enrollment policies and funding. And this one we would oppose. The impact to the school system would be extremely significant. First of all, just in terms of if you take the students that are requesting transfer from school to school to school, and this is happening, we have 200 plus schools, and their whole process to just do the transfer within the system. And now you would have the whole issue of the transfer of students coming in from out of the system and then transferring all the records, ensuring like which school are they going into, and the work, it would be so complicated. Also within our Synergy, which is our student information system, we would have to set up a whole part of it that would allow it to then communicate to other school systems. And we got an estimate of about $9 per student for any student that's coming in. We'd probably have to hire additional staff to be able to get all the data moving back and forth from the different counties. And then the other piece would be interscholastic athletics. as you recall, that has always been a major subject in terms of making sure that students are within their boundary schools when they're playing sports. So now we would have students coming in from outside of the county and just ensuring that we have that documented and they're in the right school, so they're playing sports in the right school, those types of things. It could be extremely complicated. Because first of all, we don't allow students from other schools to play in athletics in another school. They have to be in their own school. So that in itself would be a major concern. So that one would be opposed. And then Mia, if you could scroll down further, and then the water curriculum is water safety and swimming course established. According to the platform, the legislative platform, one of the things is that we do oppose anything that mandates curriculum, because that is the state sets the standards, but it is the superintendent having his staff put together and work and develop curriculum, and then the Board of Education is responsible for approving the curriculum. And so that whole process is really legislators are not supposed to be mandating what should be taught. So it goes outside of what the process is in place. And then the next bill is House Bill 901, which is Education Public School Students Recognition of External Diagnosis of Autism. And I will say that there were a lot of provisions in that bill initially that was problematic, because for example, it had where if the outside evaluator, so anyone could go to an outside evaluator, which they can, but when they got the results, they would bring it to the school. And what the bill was saying is you bring it to the school and you are then responsible for making sure that you can do whatever the recommendations are. And that is not how that process works in the school system. We have SIT teams and SST teams. And then once they get the evaluation and the IEP team looks at it, then they make determinations also. And so they must consider the outside information. It's not that. It's just that just because some evaluation says this is what I recommend, it is not necessarily what that we could do. And it could end up being very expensive. However, we were very fortunate to have the opportunity to have a meeting with, it was actually Dr. Moss and board member Olivo, and our special ed associate superintendent for special education, and our lobbyist for the board, John Tel Green, and myself had the opportunity to meet with the staff of Delegate Roberts and discuss all our concerns, and several amendments were made to that bill. And now and speaking with our associate superintendent of special education, the only concern that she really had was that everything that's now in the bill is actually already mandated in other laws. So we have to follow what we're already doing it because we have to do it. So not that we wouldn't do it if we didn't have to, but it's there already. But also the fact that it only addresses one disability when there are actually 13 other disabilities. And so the fact that, there's not just autism, there's lots of different disabilities, actually another 13. So ideally, it would be for any student who has a disability, the parent could do an outside evaluation and bring those results in. So anyway, right now it's at support with amendments. And then the other bill that's out there is Senate Bill 683, and that has to do with public utilities and solar energy generation stations and solar sitting and Preservation Credit Act of 2026. And currently, our sustainability office does not anticipate any impact on our district, and the main reason is because we're already actively expanding and enhancing our solar portfolio. So at this point, we really don't have a position on it because we are already doing those things. I mean, we could actually move that to support if you wanted. And then if you want to scroll down, Mia, please. I think there's a couple more. So this one is school bus transition, propane powered school buses. It's a grant program, fund and purchase. And this is in an effort to have improve the air quality faster. And probably the most important thing is that there is The propane buses provide immediate emission reduction at a significantly lower upfront cost than electric buses, allowing the district to replace more aging diesel vehicles in the same budget and improve air quality faster. So, and then there's a lot of detail there in terms of what the specifics aspects of the bill would be. And of course, we do actually support that. We have a pretty strong sustainability department that is always moving forward, trying to develop things and do things that are really good for the climate. So then if you could scroll down further, Mia, and then we have human trafficking reports. Reports to regional navigators and prosecutions. So there would be no fiscal impact on PGCPS as mandatory reporters. We already have a process in place for reporting suspected child abuse and human trafficking. So we would definitely support that. And then the next one has to do with Senate Bill, 292, which is the County Board of Education Student Transportation Sunset Repeal. So many, many years, the law said that school systems could not use vans, alternate vehicles to transport students. And then a couple years ago, a bill was passed that allowed for the use of vans and different types of vehicles other than your big buses. And it has been extremely helpful for a school system like ours, where for a good example would be, we have students that are in a lot of different students that are in different non-public placements, and they go all over the state and sometimes outside of the state. So, but it might just be 2 students or 3 students. Well, to take an entire big bus the way it is, and then have to use that to transport such a small number of students is extremely expensive for the system. So this bill would actually repeal that sunset provision and basically allow for the alternative transportation like forever, which we'd be all very happy about. So that we do support that. And then the next one is Senate Bill 299, County Boards of Education Therapy Dogs Policy for handling and use in schools. Now, I have here, the board already has a policy on service animals, and it does go into pretty good detail on how the students, as well as their dogs, are supposed to be handled and what we're supposed to do. I will say, though, from our platform, though, by them mandating a policy on the school system, then they are actually taking away the autonomy of the school board, because the school board does have the responsibility. They have the right to determine what policies they think the school system needs in order for governance. If you think differently about that, we can certainly take that support off and change that over to oppose or no position even. And then the one on Senate Bill 350 that's coming up on next Friday, that one is the same as the other one that we just looked at, House Bill 48. And then county boards of education are AI training program requirement. So this is an interesting one because, and board members might have a different thought, but in speaking with our chief of IT, he said he thought it was very positive that there would be a mandate for that, because first of all, it would be helpful for them to know more about AI and using AI, because it would help them in their work as board members, but also they might be called on to make different decisions about AI, or that you never know, there could be maybe some appeals related to AI, those types of things. So having the additional training would be very good for the board members to have that. On the other hand, though, just to say, again, it's an autonomy issue, because the board does have the right to make the decision to decide what training they want to require for all themselves, for all board members on certain subjects. And so here we have a legislator coming in proposing that, no, you're going to be trained on this topic. So again, in that one, I just put monitoring. And then the last one for this report is Senate Bill 381, and this is school board energy usage monthly reports. And it says that so we actually support this because we already have monthly energy reports set up. We're ready to go. And so this falls right in line with what our plans are and what we're going to be doing. So that is a very easy one. So that's basically all the bills in the nutshell that came up for us that are coming up for the next, up through the next week. So if you have any questions, you have some different thoughts on the positions, whatever, please let me know.
Thank you, Miss Welsh. Looks like Board Member Brown has a question. Board Member Brown.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair Jackson, or why I say Chair, forgive me, Dr. Moss. Quick question. When we go up to, I think it was page 2, because I couldn't really see the pages. This is a House Bill, Ways and Means Committee. This was regarding, hold on. Yes, keep going. One more up. Yes, House Bill 26, that right there. Can you talk to me a little bit about this? Because I felt like we kind of discussed this in previous meetings. What exactly are they saying here? Because I was a little confused when it comes to the opposition of accountability.
But actually, I should have taken that word accountability out of there, but the reason it was opposed was because of the fact that number one, we're talking about additional staff to be able to monitor. So we're talking about like where, within our own system, we have a whole system in place that if you're in one school and you want to transfer to another school, and it is a school that has openings and everything, then you have to put in your application to be able to transfer. And then we have this whole process in terms of who gets to be able to, basically it's what's open, what classrooms are open and what schools, and when did you get it in, those types of things. So, but that behind the scenes, that's a lot of paperwork as you're moving things from one thing to the next. And we do have Synergy, which actually does help in really moving that process through. But now that bill is also requiring that, so we would be doing a very similar type of thing, but it could be someone in Charles County says, I want to go to, I don't know, Accokeek or something. And so they would then be, and normally if they wanted to do that, they'd actually pay tuition to be able to attend Prince George's County Public Schools. So in this instance, they wouldn't have to. They could just automatically go and to that particular school and whatever it was, if in fact the school was open and the school had seats available in the grade that the student was in. So that actually requires a little, just more work and more coordination, because now it's not within our own system that we're moving information and everything. Now we're also we're working with another school system to move information. And I had a long discussion with the director of school enrollment, and he said that it would be extensive for the school system, all the school systems to be able to set that up. So that would really be operational for us. And it would require additional staff to be able to implement it.
No, thank you so much for the clarity. So I am in agreement with the opposition. Thank you.
And I do know that Dr. Moss and Amy have been out there speaking with legislators and stuff. So maybe they would like to share some of their experiences that they've had recently.
Thank you so much, Ms. Welsh. I think you've laid this out quite nicely. We've asked our delegation members not to support this measure in that it disrupts the work that we're doing in PGCPS. And for anyone who is aiming to build a choice system, PGCPS is a good model of public choice in that we have a variety of options that are available for our students. So we've stood opposed to this measure for sure. Colleagues, do you have any comments or questions about any of the bills? You don't need to have a question for Ms. Welsh. I want to make sure you also can comment on anything here or flag anything in terms of legislative maneuvers. Amy and I have one update that wasn't here. We've been working with our delegates and senators. Amy's been working with Whip Martinez. Let me make sure I get that right. And Delegation Chair Williams. I've been working with Delegate Roberson, and Chair Wilkins of Ways and Means. There's a measure that just passed last week that would give Montgomery a little bit more flexibility with their calendar to use hours instead of days. And they've been able to do that to address things like Eid and inclement weather and makeup days. While we weren't able to file a delegation bill this year, we are actively working to amend that bill to include Prince George's County. So we're on a full court press to amend that bill to give us the same flexibility that Anne Arundel County already has, that Montgomery is in pursuit of. And word on the street is that we're not the only ones, that other school districts in the states are aiming to do that. But in terms of the policy language getting ready, I've been working on it in terms of whipping votes. Vice Chair Oliva has been, or will be having conversations if she's not already, with Ashanti Martinez. Vice Chair Oliva, I don't know if you have any other legislative update before we move on.
No, I don't think so. I think that's the one that we wanted to share because it did, it came up and is a very timely discussion for us. And so we are working on that. I have spoken with Martinez and Delegation Chair Williams already. So hopefully we're in decent shape. We're doing everything we can to move that across the finish line.
Colleagues, you have anything? Vice Chair Briggs, Gordon Brown. All right. We're going to move on to the next. Thank you, Ms. Welsh, for your update and all your work on this. I know this is a lot to keep up with in 90 days, so we appreciate all the work that you do. We're going to move to item 7.2. Just remind folks that there are 5 more items remaining in discussion. There'll be 2 rounds, and we removed 7.1 so that the administration can have more time to address it. And just for the public that's watching, we've gotten questions or concerns around the grading and reporting policy for elementary schools early and whatnot. We actually had a parent to come and address the Policy and Governance Committee. So we've asked Dr. White to come and explain that to us to give us a little bit more clarity around that. So the administration is asking for more time to be able to do that. So perhaps at our next meeting, they'll be able to do it. You can imagine they're in the middle of budget, as the budget will be voted up on Thursday. So the next item is policy 1700, which is the Disabilities Issues Advisory Board. I do want to make just a general comment here. This is about the actual policy that's already on the books and the revisions that have been made. And once I just want to flag, we asked our colleagues to review these beforehand. If you've got questions for Ms. Welsh, this is a good time to ask her any questions. But in short, Ms. Welsh will go over the short title for the bill, for the policy. And then after that, I'm going to defer to Board Member Brown and Vice Chair Oliva, who've been working with this parent group on this. So Ms. Welsh, you want to give us a quick update on 1700?
Sure. So with 1700, that is the bill that is the Disabilities Issue Advisory Committee and our board, I guess. And that bill, we've had some conversation about the fact that there's so many similarities with that policy with CCAC and what goes on in CCAC. So there was a lot of conversation, and then Board Member Olivo and Board Member Brown went to the advisory committee and had a conversation to get their thoughts and really talk about how working together, what's the best way, whatever. And so I think they're here to report their conversation with that advisory board.
Thank you, Ms. Welsh. I'll turn it over to Board Member Brown, Vice Chair Olivo.
Yes, thank you so much. And congratulations on your recent event. Our committee is excited about the work that you all are doing, and we're excited about just everything that is coming together when it comes to special education and when it comes to disability, and what we do for our community. And so there were a couple of there was a lot of recommendations, let me say that, that were presented to the board in our closing meeting in June. And so we kind of have been working through this. However, prior to me being on the board, you being on the board, and even Vice Chair Olivo, there were a lot of discussion ahead of time. However, today I do want to flag recommendations that I think we can start now rather than wait later. And then there are a number of recommendations that I would like to speak to legal prior to moving forward with them, just so we can get additional clarity and ensure that there is no overlap with other organizations. So the first one that they wanted to do was, of course, change the name, right? They felt that DIAB was, or the disability issues felt like there was always an issue. They didn't want a negative connotation with the name. And so one of the great names they came up with was the Advisory Council of Disability Affairs. Whether we expand the scope or we don't, I think it'll still reach exactly the work that we're doing. And so I want to highly recommend that that's going to be the name change. And Mrs. Welsh, I'll make sure that I send this information to you as well to make sure that we can update anything.
Thank you.
The second thing was the reporting flexibility. You know, a lot of times in the language, and maybe Ms. Welsh, you can correct me, it says mandatory, and we could possibly change the language as may or shall to make it a little bit more flexible because of the information, and maybe we're not getting information on time from the administration. And so we wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity for flexibility, not necessarily mandatory. The other recommendation that we definitely support are staggered appointments. Like the board, when nobody's available, the work doesn't get done. And so when you have all board members applying at the same time and all board members having to leave at the same time, it disrupts the work. And so one of the recommendations is that they advise that during 1 year, the current board will serve fully as advisors. And at the end of year one, half of the board will transition out. And then new group members will take their place. Those who remain or return after serving so it'll be half and half, half and half. So I said that I think that it will be doable. Bylaws and governance. So just like any committee, just like even the board, it's important that they, go through bylaws and governance. And part of it was because we knew that PCAC had bylaws. And so PCAC and DIAB, hopefully formerly known, both of them do the work for the constituents, and both of them pretty much run their meetings pretty similar. And so we wanted to make sure that, or the chair wanted to make sure that it was aligned with all of the board and all of the committees that are here, that we adopt Robert's Rule of Order, we ensure Open Meetings Act compliance, and the rationale behind that was mandating bylaws for the board, including Robert Rules of Order and compliance with the Open Meetings Act aligns with standards, practices for other boards. This ensures consistency, transparency, and accountability, reflecting established governance norms. The other recommendation that I believe we should move forward with is the role clarification. We need to make a clear distinction through both written and verbal communication for what DIAB is versus CCAC to prevent overlap and confusion, to ensure each body operates effectively within its mandate while allowing room for collaboration. I have two more things that I want to bring up. So DIAB membership. What we did notice in the 2024 and 25 term, certain members did not meet the attendance requirement outlawed by board policy 1700, which mandates participation and at least 50% of scheduled meetings. The board recommends that these members be replaced for the upcoming term. And I think that's fair because I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done. We see that sometimes there is lack of continuity amongst members, and we want to make sure that those who really want to do the work and really want to get behind what DIAB is all about, that we promote that. And lastly, I did want to say that they did want to address and have an opportunity to have two subcommittees. One of them was the HR committee, and I believe it's like new construction committee. I don't have it in front of me, but those two committees, they wanted to have a subcommittee because they should obviously the climate that we're in and the accountability, this all goes hand in hand, even when it comes to ADA and new buildings. And so those are the recommendations that the board has been in alignment with. However, I will say that one of the last things I wanted to bring up, I do feel like we need to bring this back up in the next 2 years. We need to revisit to see if we can continue to expand scope. So that will be my last recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Given that, do any of my colleagues have questions for Board Member Vice Chair Lebo? Did you want to add to this? I'm sorry, I didn't defer to you here.
No, Board Member Brown covered everything. I don't have anything to add. Thank you so much.
Colleagues, are there questions? Are there questions around this? If there are no questions, what we need to do now is send this back um, to the policy sponsor for revision approval. And then once these changes have been updated in the document, Ms. Welsh will bring them back, and then they will move through the rest of our policy making process. So these recommendations should be included in the next version that comes, and then we can debate it and decide as a committee if that is the way forward. So the question is, shall the committee recommend policy 1700 Disabilities Issue Advisory Board to the policy sponsor for revision approval? No additional comments. Ms. Johnson, please take the roll call.
Dr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Olivo,
Yes.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs.
Aye.
There are 4 in the affirmative.
Policy 1700 Disabilities Issues Advisory Board will be recommended to the policy sponsor for revision approval. Now we'll move to item 7.3 for tonight. And this is policy 8300, Rules of Procedures and Appeals and Hearings under State Law 4205 of the Education Article of State Maryland. So this is policy 8300. The chair recognizes Ms. Welsh to provide an update on policy 8300, Rules of Procedures and Appeals and Hearings under Maryland Annotated Code 4205 of the Education Article.
Okay, so originally we had a policy, we do have a policy right now, policy 4200. And and then it talks about the rules of procedures and hearings requested under 6-202 and 4-205. And so I took that policy, made some revisions to it, but I also divided it. And so I do have, as you'll see on the agenda, the first policy is 4-205 and the second policy is 6-202. Because if you recall back, was it the last meeting or the meeting before when we did the one on 7305, it's pretty intense. It has a lot of procedure, and a lot of very specific steps for each of those types of, for that particular type of hearing. And so I thought it might make it easier, and everything will be sitting in under the 8000s, which will be internal policies, because they're really the board's policy in terms of how they're going to do different appeals or different hearings. And so for simplicity's sake, to have them separated out so that you can easily go to either 7305, 4205, or whatever, or 6202, I think it would be easier. So, Mia, if you could just share the screen. And these are not major changes, really. They're very minor. Of course, the title was changed. And then if you scroll down, please. And then the purpose was changed to, in terms of taking out, this is only specific to 4-205 instead of saying both 6 and 6-202. And then if you scroll down further, I think if you keep going, we'll see if there are any definitions.
That's Ms. Welsh. That's fine. I think our colleagues may have reviewed this before the meeting. So just want to make sure we go over the major changes that were made.
Okay. Which there was okay, so there was very specific language about that was added related to the computation of the time,
Okay.
in terms of days, because that's really important. You know, someone could say, you know, you missed the time, and then they didn't understand. A person didn't understand what that timeline was. So that would be a significant change. And then if you scroll down further, again, that's just in the definitions. And then I'm thinking. There's minor changes like taking CEO and putting in superintendent, and then I did reference superintendent of schools. I actually think most of these are very wording types of changes. They're not that significant. Keep going. That I think. Oh, you keep going. Oh, so all of that being that's wiped out is everything related to 6202. So that I took all deleted all that.
Okay. I'm going to see at this time if any of my colleagues have questions. Miss Brown.
Okay, I know we're talking about language. Ms. Welsh, question. For this policy, would we be able to say interim superintendent and or designee? Because there have just from the last administration transition, it just seemed like there were jobs that people weren't able to do or perform. And I didn't know if that was going to be relevant for this.
So, I actually put in superintendent because the interim superintendent, that title will be disappearing after June, I would assume, and then you'll have a permanent superintendent. And this policy itself, by the time it gets through the review process and everything, will be probably the end of the school year. So that it'll start off the beginning of the year with the term superintendent.
And I just want to flag that it should be understood in all of our policy that superintendent, in the event that there's an interim superintendent, those are the same people because the interim superintendent has the same rights and privileges of a superintendent. Um, yeah, I think there was some interesting interpretation last time. You flag a legitimate concern, but the superintendent, be it interim or full superintendent, anywhere in our policy where it says superintendent, that person has the same rights and privileges. Vice Chair Briggs.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Welch, I just had a question about the piece I suggested about the hearing examiner. I know that we are able to, I guess, remove the hearing examiner in the event that there's a reason behind that. I didn't hear you speak about that. Just wanted to confirm that that's in there.
Um, and actually, hold on one second. That you had suggested that for 7305, and I know I made that change for that, and it's but I don't think I included it here. Hold on. It was, no, I will put that in. Make sure I have it in there.
Okay. Yeah, want to make sure that's in there before, because I think that's as I mentioned before, like we've had a number of times where the hearing examiner has given. We've had instances, or there can be instances where a hearing examiner gives information that may not be accurate. So I just want to make sure that if that is something that we have the power to do, since that was outlined in the policy, then we clearly understand what that process is. So I really am speaking to like also kind of detailing like what that is, so we can refer back to the specific policy.
Okay.
If it's another policy that already currently exists that you were referencing, if we can just reference that and reference back to it, those are really the requests I'm making.
Well, I will probably whatever I put in any of the three, they'll get in all three. So that way it's very clear and you can just read it. You'll be looking at 4205 and you can just stay right there and read what has to happen in that situation because they'll be very similar.
Okay, thank you so much.
So we should be able to take 7.3 and 7.4 up together. Isn't that correct, Ms. Welsh?
Yes, you could. You
Okay.
really could because they're the very same changes. They're just reversed. Like
Okay.
where I took like I took one piece out and one, then I took the other piece out and the other. So
Okay. So the question is, shall the committee recommend policy 8301, rules of procedures and hearing requested under section 6202 and under section 4205, to the policy sponsor for revision approval? Ms. Johnson, will you take the roll?
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs.
Aye.
There are 4 in the affirmative.
Thank you. Now we'll move to item 7.5, which is proclamations. The chair recognizes Ms. Welsh to provide an update on policy 9305 proclamations.
so this oh, I don't have a so this policy is very similar to the also the resolutions policy. So this is 9305 and the other one is 3186. So and so I'd like to get this policy rescinded and then combine the two so we have a policy that would address both proclamations and resolutions and actually put them in the 8000 series.
Okay. Are there any questions from the committee? So the question is, shall the committee recommend policy 9305 proclamations to the policy sponsor for revision approval? Remember, this is recension of that. And we'll get a different policy later that includes this information. All right. If there's no discussion, Ms. Johnson, please take the roll call.
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs.
Aye.
There are 4 in the affirmative.
There are 4 in the affirmative. Policy 9305 proclamations will be recommended to the policy sponsor for revision approval. We're now going to move to item 7.5, which is policy 3323 purchasing. Ms. Welsh, I'll just name that this policy is here tonight. Policy 3323 purchasing. We made a lot of revisions on this, but at this time, I'm going to ask the committee to table this policy indefinitely, in that the system has to work to address some purchasing challenges that come from existing laws, existing practices. It's just been hanging out here for a minute. And so we just need to table it indefinitely so it doesn't keep showing up on our agenda. And what we will do is put it back on, we will vote in May to put it on next year's policy once they've had time. So the question is, any questions about that? Sorry, any questions? There are no questions. The question is, shall the committee recommend policy 3323 purchasing the question is, shall the committee table policy 3323 purchasing indefinitely? Ms. Johnson, please take the roll.
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs.
Aye.
There are 4 in the affirmative.
All right, policy 3323 purchasing has been tabled indefinitely. Ms. Wells, please let Chief Howell know she can breathe a little bit to finish her work. All right, we'll now move to item 8.0. This is policies for second consideration. These items are going out for public comment. So it's the student safety, prevention of child sexual abuse, and reporting suspected child abuse and neglect. So the question is, shall the committee release the policy under agenda item 8.1 for public comment? Is there any discussion? There's no discussion. Ms. Johnson, please take a roll call vote.
Dr. Moss,
Aye.
Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
there are 4 in the affirmative.
There are four in the affirmative. The policy under agenda item 8.1 will be released for public comment. Item 9.0, which is the policy for third consideration. This is to advance to the full board for an enactment. We've done a lot of work on this policy, so it's exciting to get it here. This is one of the superintendent's signature initiatives to revise this policy. So the policy under agenda item 9.1 was submitted for public comment. One public comment was received. The chair recognizes Ms. Welch to share the comments received.
So for that policy, we received one, and it was from a parent, and the biggest concerns that she shared, first of all, was that she talked about ensuring accountability, consistency, and transparency in its implementation. And even though the policy talks about, having a meaningful relationship with parents and being very respectful and, considering them equal partners as we're working together on different things, in terms of their students and the school, those types of things. This parent talked about the fact that many families continue to experience inconsistent communication, limited opportunities for meaningful input, and uneven engagement practices from school to school. So for that particular comment, so this is just a suggestion. My thinking is that we add a provision in the policy that actually talks about just a fact that the superintendent would be responsible for setting up a accountability standard or something, doing something, putting a plan together, whatever, that he would then require of his principals for each of the schools. And so we could add that in. And then when they do the administrative procedure, or actually even put it in under implementation, where it would say the superintendent is responsible for developing a administrative procedure that contains blah, blah, blah. And it could have language like that to address that. And then the other thing they talked about, and I'm not sure how you would go about this, but she was saying about making sure that families know, like when you get comments from parents, how do you use that? They need to know that their voices made some change. So how would that be? How would that process work? I'm not 100% sure about that. But the other piece she talked about was that making sure that the required annual report on this policy is publicly accessible and parent friendly with opportunities. Now, for families to review and discuss, my thinking was, and I might be wrong, was that when someone in the administration brings a report to the Board of Education, I thought that would be on the agenda, and that would be someone could access it by seeing that, but maybe that's not the case. Maybe parents don't always have the ability to access all the reports that are provided to the board. I don't know that. And that's certainly something we could add.
Thank you, Ms. Welsh. Colleagues, any comments? I've got one, but I want to defer to you all before do we still have quorum? I don't see Ms. Oliva. Oh, we still have quorum. Okay. Any comments from colleagues before I say mine? I'm curious if we could just put the superintendent shall, there's the last part of this feedback says discuss the findings. So not only an opportunity to make the report publicly available and parent friendly, but the comment also says and discuss the findings. So perhaps we should require in the policy that the superintendent, in partnership with the Parent Community Advisory Council, will discuss the findings of these. So maybe requiring the representation to be given to the PCAC and an opportunity for discussion and engagement. But I don't know if that's the right venue, but my colleagues would need to weigh in. But I just wanted to, I did think it was a good idea. I think we already make the report publicly available. But the only part that I think we could do that we don't already do is the discussion of the findings with parents. I don't know any other way to achieve that. But I'll defer to my colleague, Board Member Brown, who has her hand up.
And thank you so much, Dr. Moss. So I was essentially alluding to the fact that I feel like that's already being done and even being done on PTCPS website about certain things. So when it came to because I think what this constituent is addressing is transparency, and so I think this administration has gone above and beyond to delivering transparency. As a board member, I know that if my constituents have questions, and I'm sure everybody else that's on the board, if they have specific questions about findings, they can kind of come directly to us. So I think if we do discuss it with we need to discuss it with PCAC first to see if that's something that they want to take on. If they feel like that's an opportunity for them, but that's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, thank you. Vice Chair Briggs, did you have anything? Go ahead, Vice Chair Briggs.
Yeah, thank you so much. I guess the biggest piece for me is I'm thinking about where it makes sense. So if it's about implementation, then I think that that would be, an important piece to think about how do we integrate it into a plan? So is it a work plan or is it something, what are you doing about it? To the point that board member Brown made about accountability. I feel like there's that piece around like what are we actually doing with the information. So I don't know if a discussion is necessarily leading in that direction. More so, what are you doing? And I also feel like this could be a point, a kind of a starting point for how do we actually get these types of things even baked into the evaluation or things like that. So if we're moving in a continuum in a direction of like more accountability and actually having some teeth there, then I think that that might be a good starting point is like, how do you actually, embed this in a work plan? What steps are you taking towards this? And then the superintendent and his team reporting back out to us about those things. And of course, we can always ask questions, and maybe that's even in a public forum or something.
So what I'm hearing from you colleagues is we don't need to address this in this policy. We need to make some behavior or practice changes in terms of our core work. So there's nothing that needs to be done from a policy standpoint. Is that what the two of you are suggesting? I'm in agreement with you. I just want to make sure I'm interpreting it correctly.
Well, I was saying, I think we can't, I think to the point you were making, we could have something in there saying there could be a
Okay.
presentation on the points, but I don't know if we need to have a discussion, is what I was suggesting.
Yeah, and what I was alluding to, if we do implementation, including PCAC, we need to discuss that with PCAC prior to putting them into the policy about their new job function, I guess, and how they can start that discussion if we decide to do a discussion. But I am in agreement with whatever.
Yeah. So here's what we could do. We still can, Miss Welsh, tell me if I'm wrong. Let's have a conversation with PCAC before Thursday because this goes on the agenda on Thursday, right? This is already on the agenda for Thursday, right?
I don't know, Mia.
It's pending this vote.
Yeah. So if PCAC is okay with it, we can amend it during the board meeting. If necessary, if they're not, we could just leave it alone. But I want to make sure we move this on. But let's get some language together and run it by PCAC before Thursday, and we can do an amendment during the board meeting because the board has to vote on it and approve it fully anyway. So it could be amended. So yeah, Miss Welsh, let's reach out to PCAC and see if they're okay with us adding this. And if so, I'll draft an amendment for Thursday.
And do you want me so for that piece for PCAC, but the other piece, just some language where it says about implementing the superintendent's responsible for developing a administrative procedure that because we have a lot of policies that say, and within that administrative procedure, we want to see blah 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 or something, and we could have something related to accountability. I do remember the superintendent when he was talking about the policy in one of the board meetings, he talked about the fact that there was nothing about accountability in this policy. And so I do think it's that piece actually falls to the superintendent and should be part of the administrative procedures. So, but the board can say to the superintendent, I think you need to put a process in place to address accountability. So I could it wouldn't be much language, but I could add that language into that policy.
Let's add both of it as an amendment, and I'd like to let's just pass it as it's written right now, and let's amend it based on public comment during the meeting.
Okay.
So let's put all of that together in an amendment. One of my colleagues, and I'll present it with an amendment, and then the board can accept it. That also shows that we're doing our due diligence here by addressing public comment. So I'm super thankful for the commenter who did this, because it's pushing the policy to be stronger. But I just want to do it the right way and do a full amendment once we've heard from them. I think Board
Okay.
Member Brown is right. We need to make sure PCAC is actually okay with this, because honestly, what we have done with this policy throughout the whole process has been engaging PCAC. We've engaged them every step of the way, so I don't think we should deviate from that now. All right, so the question is, shall the committee recommend the policies under agenda item 9.1 to the full board for enactment? Ms. Johnson, please take the roll.
Dr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Oliva, Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs.
Aye.
There are 3 in the affirmative.
There are 3 in the affirmative. The policy under agenda item 9.1 will be recommended to the full board for policy, for consideration enactment. Now we're going to adjourn. The chair informs the public the next virtual policy and governance committee meeting will be March 10th, 2026. Please continue to check the Prince George's County Board of Education website for meeting information and updates. Thank you all for the great discussion and attendance. To our viewers, thank you for watching. There being no further business, the time is now 6:08 in record time. The February 2026 Policy and Governance Committee meeting is adjourned. Thank y'all. Have a good night.
Good night.
All right.